There's a man in your life who could tell you the torque output of a 1969 Mustang, but couldn't name a single player on his country's national football team. And somewhere, someone called him weird for it. They were wrong. Most people assume that men who obsess over cars and ignore football are just avoiding something. Avoiding socializing, avoiding masculinity norms, avoiding the world. But what if the opposite is true? What if choosing cars over football is one of the most psychologically revealing decisions a man can make? And what it reveals is actually something remarkable. Here is what the psychology actually says, and it will change how you see these men forever. Let's start with something almost nobody talks about. Control. Real, tangible, undeniable control. When you watch football, you are a spectator. Your emotions rise and fall based on what 22 other men do with their bodies on a field. You have zero influence over the outcome. You invest emotional energy into something completely outside your hands, and at the end of 90 minutes, you either celebrate or suffer based on choices that were never yours to make. Now imagine a man in a garage on a Saturday afternoon. There is an engine in front of him that has not started in 30 years. Every problem he encounters has a solution. Every solution he finds is a direct result of his own thinking, his own hands, his own patience. When that engine finally turns over, that feeling, that specific feeling, is something football will never give you because he earned it completely, personally, irrevocably. Psychologists call this internal locus of control. It is the belief that your outcomes are determined by your own actions rather than external forces. Studies consistently show that people with a strong internal locus of control experience lower anxiety, higher self-esteem, and greater life satisfaction. Men who are drawn to cars are, without realizing it, drawn to an activity that perfectly mirrors and reinforces this psychological orientation. They are not avoiding competition. They are choosing a competition they can actually win. And then there is the personality dimension that almost no one considers. In the Big Five personality model, the most scientifically validated framework for understanding human personality, there is a trait called openness to experience. It measures curiosity, aesthetic sensitivity, and a love of complexity. Car enthusiasts consistently score higher on this trait. They are not just people who like engines. They are people who see beauty in systems, who find elegance in engineering, who experience genuine aesthetic pleasure from the curve of a fender or the sound of a perfectly tuned exhaust. Football, at its core, is about narrative. It is tribal. It is us versus them. It taps into some of the oldest social instincts in the human brain: belonging, loyalty, collective identity. These are real psychological needs, and football meets them brilliantly. But they are not the only psychological needs a man has. Some men are wired for a different kind of meaning. Not the meaning that comes from belonging to a group, but the meaning that comes from mastering something deeply complex, something that fights back, something that demands everything you have. Think about what it actually takes to restore a car. You need mechanical knowledge, aesthetic judgment, financial planning, problem solving under pressure, patience that stretches across months or even years, and the emotional resilience to tear apart something you love because you know it will be better when you rebuild it. That is not avoidance. That is one of the most complete expressions of human capability there is. There is also something deeply important happening at the level of identity. Psychologists who study self-concept have found that the objects we choose to invest in become extensions of ourselves. Your car is not just your car. It is a physical manifestation of how you see yourself and how you want the world to see you. Every modification, every restoration decision, every choice of vehicle communicates something about your values, your aesthetics, your history. It is autobiography written in steel and chrome. Football loyalty also shapes identity, but in a fundamentally different way. When you support a football club, your identity becomes partially dependent on that club. Their victories become your pride. Their failures become your shame. You are borrowing identity from something external. The car enthusiast is building identity from the inside out. He is not asking a team to represent him. He is representing himself directly through what he creates and maintains. Now, here is where it gets genuinely fascinating at a neurological level. When a man learns that his team won, his brain releases dopamine. It is real, it is measurable, it feels good. But researchers have found something remarkable about the dopamine response linked to personal mastery, to solving a problem yourself, to completing a difficult skill-based task. It is more intense, longer lasting, and more deeply integrated into long-term memory than the dopamine hit from watching someone else succeed. The garage is not a consolation prize for men who don't like football. For some brains, it is simply a more powerful reward system. And let's be honest about the social element, because this is where the stereotype really breaks down. Car culture is one of the most socially rich subcultures in existence. Car meets, online forums, restoration communities, racing clubs, these are spaces of intense human connection. But the bonding mechanism is different. In football culture, you bond through shared emotion, the collective high of a last-minute winner, the shared grief of a penalty shootout loss. In car culture, you bond through shared knowledge, through teaching and learning, through watching someone older than you explain something with their hands that no book could ever communicate. It is a different kind of intimacy. Not louder, just deeper. There is also a generational transmission dimension that deserves attention. For many men who love cars, the origin story begins with a father, a grandfather, an uncle. A cold garage, a rusted vehicle, two pairs of hands on the same wrench. The car was never just the car. It was the relationship. It was the language they used when no other language was available. Some families don't say "I love you" easily, but they spend 12 Saturdays rebuilding a gearbox together, and something gets said that words could never carry. Football has this too. Fathers and sons watching matches, rituals passed down through generations. But the car version is participatory. It is not watching together. It is doing together. And psychologists who study attachment and bonding consistently find that shared activity, especially shared productive activity, builds some of the strongest relational bonds humans are capable of forming. So, what does it all add up to? When you see a man who would rather spend his Sunday underneath a car than watching a match, you are not looking at someone who rejected masculinity or community or competition. You are looking at someone whose brain is wired for autonomy over tribalism, mastery over spectatorship, creation over consumption. Someone who finds identity from the inside out. Someone for whom the reward of doing something deeply difficult with your own two hands is more satisfying than any scoreline could ever be. And there is one final thing worth saying. In a world that increasingly turns everything into passive consumption, streaming, scrolling, watching, waiting, the man in the garage is doing something quietly radical. He is refusing to be an audience. He is insisting on being the protagonist of his own experience. Every bolt he turns is a small act of resistance against a culture that would rather you watch than do. Consume than create. Follow than lead. The next time someone calls a car guy antisocial for skipping the match, remember this: he is not missing out on life. He is living it in a way most people no longer know how to.